Good morning and good evening, class. Welcome back. Today we will be starting Business Essentials Part 3. And this Part 3 will basically be focusing on the documentations. We have been studying a lot about requirement gathering processes, tools, techniques, advantages, disadvantages, stakeholders. We almost know everything that comes under basic course of business analysis. And in this part 3, we will focus on the documentation. So there are three things we have in this part 3. Let me show you. The first one, we will be discussing about the MOM, the minutes of meeting. And the second thing, requirement traceability matrix. And the final one, which is the most important part of this session, is BRD, business requirement documentations. We all have seen a little bit about these three before in our previous classes, and we all know some extent what is MOM and what is stress matrix and what is BRD. The agenda of this course will be detailing these three and know more about things. So for the YouTube viewers, if you're watching it here, if you would like to go back and see the previous videos, this will be helpful for you. Otherwise, it is not required because we'll be discussing these three from the start, so you can continue watching this video if you're watching on YouTube. So we will complete the whole training, this whole essentials in 2 classes. Today, we will be completing MOM and Trace Matrix, and the next class will be one complete class about the BRD. BRD is very important. We have a lot to discuss, so I just thought to keep this separately so that we don't miss anything, and we get enough time, sufficient time to discuss and ask questions and review all those, the details about this document. So objective, as I said, by end of this course, you should be able to know what is MOM, what is RTM. RTM is like requirement traceability matrix, and how do we create an accurate and complete both of these documentations. And you should be able to know what are the benefits of RTM and MOM both. And when we write these documents, what are the key components we have to use writing these documents? And same goes to BRD. So in BRD, we will be discussing what is the definition of BRD and what is the purpose of the BRD, what are the different key components we write in the BRD, and what are the different good writing techniques that we have to keep in practice when we are writing the BRDs. So this will be completely a functional training on the documentations. Documentation is very important for BA role. You will always see yourself writing a lot of documentations, always, trust me. And these are some of the documents that you will use a lot most of the time. So please pay good attention to these training sessions and feel free to ask any questions you may have during the training. Stop me and ask your questions. Key points, as I always have been reminding you guys, you do not need to memorize anything unless there is a formula, and that mathematical formula, again, you have to memorize by practicing them. And I will always try to write this red icon that you see it here. This will be there if I want you guys to remember anything or memorize anything for the future work. Some key terms that I have been repeating from day one, you will see some of them I have changed, and most of them will continue as is. So I know you all know what these terms are, but just in case if you have any doubts in any of these terms, let me know. I would be able to answer your question. These are important terms that you will always hear people talking in your professional life working as a BA. What is MOM? MOM is minutes of meeting. It is also called minutes. You will hear people saying it only minutes, just minutes, and MOM or minutes of meeting. So official name is minutes of meeting. In short, we call it MOM. But in general, people, they frequently use the words minute, just minutes. So if you hear any of these terms, do not get confused. Now, what actually is MOM? MOM is nothing but the record of what is happening during any of the meetings, whatever meeting you're joining or attending or facilitating. You will write the key points, the keynotes of that meeting, like what is something we have discussed. You may avoid noting everything that is being discussed because in one of the meetings, there will be like hundreds of things that people will discuss and review. You don't need to capture everything. The only focus you have to do is what are the key points that I would want to make a record so that people can review and I can review in future. So all those key points you will record, you will write, and that we call like minutes. And then you have to see if there is any action is also coming from there. Let's say we have discussed 5 items, and out of 5, one item is something we are taking it as an action, that somebody has to work, do something to fix it, or maybe as a team we all have to work on that particular thing. So you will also clearly write down what is the action we are taking and who will be accountable for that action, and what is the timeline, when are we going to close that action. So those all important points you will document in MOM. This, as I said, this document is very important because you will be sharing this information to everyone within that meeting, or probably someone that did not join the meeting, but you want that person to see what we have discussed. Example, you want your managers or your the leaders to see what is the important points, what are different important points you guys have discussed. So you would want to share this MOM to them as well. So this is very important for you to write things very clearly, very precisely, and you need to document if there's any action and what is the due date. That is very important. We cannot have simple action without a due date. Due date is very important. When are we going to close, and targeting to close that thing. So that is very important. Now, when we write the MOM, what usually we should be writing in that document. So before I go ahead and talk about what are the different key things you will be writing, just let me give you, MOM is a very simple thing. You can simply write some bullet points in your email body that will be again considered as your MOM. You may have some fancy Excel or Word document that you may have created before, or your company might be using. And in that particular format, you will be writing all those points. That could be one of your MOM as well. So don't see it like a very complicated document. This is very simple document, but very important thing, because we are capturing all those key points that we will review in future, maybe today, tomorrow, and maybe throughout the project life cycle. So this exercise is very important. However, the document and any format is not important. You can use your simple, as I said, email body or any other simple tool that you can use. You don't need any high-tech tool. You need high-touch tool. High-touch as in whatever you're writing is very important. So that should be very clearly and precisely mentioned. And it doesn't require you to go and use some fancy tools. So you need to focus on the contents of the MOM, not the documentation or the format. But since you are working as a BA, I would recommend you to use one of the formats so that it is easy for you to carry the same format always. And if you use the same thing always, people will be used to look at that, see that, and understand that. So this will be easy for everyone. So probably we can be like focus on only one format that we'll be using always. Okay, so we were talking what usually includes in the MOM. So this will have the name of the attendees, whoever is attending that meeting. You may also want to add the names who did not attend. Example, you invited 5 people, but 1 people did not show up. So you will specifically mention non-attendees and you will write the name. You may also write the name of the people you did not invite, but they joined or attended the meeting. We call them as a guest or external attendees. Sometimes what happens, you sent me an invite and you asked me, okay, we are going to discuss these topics in the meeting. And I believe someone from my team would be required or important for me to have that person as well in that meeting. So I will invite, and I may not ask your permission. I may simply go ahead and forward your email invite to that person, and that person will be joining. So that particular person that you did not invite but still joining will be your guest or external attendees. You will also write their names and what date you're having this meeting. And obviously, what was the agenda of the meeting? These are the basic things you will be writing. Now, what else? I'll teach you in further slides. I have one sample format for you. So I'll teach you what else we should be writing in that meeting, in that note. And basically what happens, minutes of meeting are typically taken by a designated person. It means as a BA, you may decide to write on your own, or you may decide to assign someone for taking the notes. And why would you assign someone? In what cases, what scenarios you will be doing and you will not be doing? Simple, pretty simple. Example, you're doing it like for maybe 2 or 3 people. Hopefully you should be able to manage things, you should be able to communicate, facilitate, talk, ask probing questions, and you should be also able to write things. Take an example where you have like large group of people and you have a lot of different points to discuss. You have a lot of other facilitations, activities that you have to do. So in that case, probably you may not be able to write and do all those things in parallel altogether. So you believe you might miss some of the important points to write, or you may not write in the way that should be written. So what you will do, you will assign someone just to take notes. Ask the person, okay, you don't have to worry about, you just keep adding whatever you can add in the points, and then I will review and I will see what are the important points that we have to continue and we have to remove. I'll take care of that. You just go ahead and start writing. So that is one of the ways you can decide to have someone writing those notes for you. Now, who that someone will be is completely depends. Could be your colleague, could be your some junior members, or maybe your senior member, maybe your project manager, maybe one of your team members, whoever. I really have no idea. That depends upon your the planning, how you are planning to take things forward, and what is the agenda you have. So that's one of the important points. And MOM is like a contract. You know, it's official record. Why I'm saying before we share this MOM and before we close the meeting, what normally we do is whatever documents or points we have written, as a BA, it is very important for you to go ahead and revise all those points with the, like kind of a recalling. Tell them, okay, folks, these are the important points we have discussed, and this is what I have taken as a note, and I'm going to share this with all of you after this meeting. And I may also include someone from the management. So if this looks good to you, that's fine. If you would like me to add or remove something, please let me know. So you ask then and there so that people are not surprised looking at your MOM notes in future. Sometimes what happens, you note down something which people may not feel comfortable with. They have discussed those points in the meeting, but they don't want you to document it, make it official, and send to everyone, to the management. So it is always advisable for you to tell them, give them the heads up. These are the points we have written, and I'm going to share with these group of people. So you will see people talking to you, and if they hear someone's name, probably they would be really alert, and they will ask you to add something or remove something or modify something in different way. So this will be like win-win situation for all of you. So I would always recommend you guys, before you share any of the MOM, before you call off that meeting, go ahead, before you let the people go back to their work, review that point quickly and win their confidence and be in a win-win situation so that you don't have any conflicts looking at the notes from different group of people. All right, so next we have, what is the objective of MOM? It looks like I have already discussed everything. I discussed what is MOM, what is the objective, but let us see what we have here in this slide. So the main objective of minutes of meeting is to create an accurate and complete record of the key points we have discussed, any decisions we have made, any actions that have been assigned during that meeting. So just three things. So the key points, what you have discussed, the key points, not everything, and any decisions that we have made or any action that we have taken. You will document these three main points in that MOM accurately, completely, precisely. No vague terms, no confusing sentences. Do not try to add your personal belief or your agenda. No, that should be completely a meeting notes. That should not be BS agenda or PM's agenda or product agenda. This is something what we are discussing. That could be good, or sometimes that may not be like that appealing, but you have to write all those points. So this MOM will provide you the good record, what we have discussed. Obviously, we are capturing all those main points. We are reviewing with the team. We are discussing, giving them the heads up what we are going to share with the team. And once we have sent this report to everyone, this will be a record for you. And this will be like a basis for the record you will always be using as a reference point. Like who attended, what we discussed anytime during the project tenure. We have done some meeting today, and probably you might be reviewing those after 2 months during the project execution. You may have something came up at that time that you would want to review what was the base of these points. So you would want to go back and review those minutes. So this will be like a record for you that what was the discussed. This is very important. And you always keep these minutes somewhere maybe on a company's any dedicated folder resources. If you're using any online tools like Confluence, SharePoint, you will have everything recorded, uploaded there in those places so that everyone can go ahead and watch and look at those records. And you want to make it like available publicly so that anyone can come within your organization and can see what was discussed at that time. So you want to like create a folder named minutes of meeting, and within those you want to create like a months folder or dates folder, and you will upload all those minutes so that every person in your team can go ahead and see it as a record. So this is very important. And obviously it facilitates accountability, as in, it clearly tells who is responsible for what thing and what action and what is the due date of that action. So this will work as an accountability document as well. You have something written and you have made me as accountable. Okay, Sajid will be completing this thing by this date. And obviously, unless I say yes, you will not write those my name there in that point. So it is understood, we have discussed. And before you're sharing this, you're also going ahead at the final note, you're reviewing with the team members, okay, these are the points we have discussed, and this is one of the actions that Sajid will be doing by this date. So if I had any objections or anything to add or remove, I will tell then and there, So tomorrow, if that work is not getting completed, I may be held accountable for that, for done or for not done in both the cases. So this is very important for you. It's a very important document. So why I'm taking that much time to explain this, because you will see this very important documentation. This works very greatly with you as a BA, as long as you grow in the project. This is very important. It is important to have the record of what the points you have discussed. Doesn't matter what method you're working. If you're working an agile way of working or a waterfall way of working, that's completely fine. Minutes are something differently, which is common across the methods. You will be always using this thing. So as we were talking, what are the different key elements of the MOM? You will have the attendee's name, date and time of that meeting when you're facilitating. What is the agenda of that meeting? You have to set this agenda pretty well in advance and send an email to the people, or through any communication media. People should know what is the agenda of the meeting. That's the only way you can make it success. If people doesn't know what they're going to face and they're going to talk, they will not be ready for you. So in order for you to make them ready and be ready for you, answer your questions, you have to set the agenda in advance and let them know before the meeting. And you will have the discussion points in that MOM, and you will have any decisions and actions in that MOM. And you will also have deadlines for the completion, like in a due date, what date we will be completing. Okay, how to create an accurate and complete MOM? Writing points is something different, and accurately writing, completely writing is something different. People can talk a lot of things, but people can talk senseful things. It's a different thing. So the same way, you can write a lot of points, but is that really accurate or complete? How do you make sure I'm writing a complete and accurate MOM? So these are some of the points you may want to pay more attention or focused, so that you will create a good and complete MOM. So as I said, you need to have an agenda in advance. If you do not have agenda of the meeting, this will be completely a failure. You don't know what people are going to ask you or give you the responses on your questions. I'm not ready. So it is always important and advisable for you to set an agenda and let the people know, folks, this is the agenda of the meeting and we are going to discuss, and this is what I'm expecting from the meeting, from all the folks. So setting proper expectation is also very important. So you set the proper expectation in that agenda. Topic is this, and this is what my expectations from the meeting. So people will be well aware and ready to answer your questions. You need to designate a note taker if needed. As I said, probably you might be calling C-level executives or the senior folks or junior folks. All people are coming together. You may not be able to facilitate things, control the meeting, and you may also have to ask probing questions. Make sure you're asking the right questions so people understand your question. And at the same time, you should also be writing everything. Sometimes this is not possible for you. So you would want to have someone who is dedicatedly taking the notes. So this is very important. And now you may ask, why don't I go ahead and record the session? You can do this. It's completely yours. It's fine. You can go ahead and have a video recording or audio recording, but you may not be able to finalize those notes before you close that meeting. As I have recommended you, you need to give them the heads up what are the different points you have taken and what you're going to share. So that recording might not serve that purpose. However, that might be a really important key tool for you when you do your homework and you would like to go ahead and see what we discuss in that meeting. You will see everything like from start to end in the recordings. That is one of the important tools, but probably that might not serve the purpose. So you need to have someone writing those notes for you, or if you can do, that's completely fine. And yep, you have to take notes throughout the meeting. You don't want to miss something. Sometimes what happens, people are talking something, they're reviewing something, and you come into the flow and you start keep talking, keep arguing, and keep asking probing questions, and you tend to forget writing notes. And then you move to the next topic, and then next, and then you suddenly recall, oh, I did not write the notes. I don't know what was, I do not remember what actually was discussion, what actually was the point. So you don't want to miss that. Sometimes people use some technical jargons. Technical jargons could be from the IT, from the sales, from the any other department, marketing. They all have their technical jargons. You may not understand everything. And you found something very important and you forget to write at that time because you were talking, or you are probably preparing your questions, probing questions, and then you were struggling to recall what was that word, what was that point, and you don't want to be in a situation, go and ask that person again, hey, what did you use that? What was the meaning? This will not give a professional, impression. So I would recommend you keep writing. You need to have someone writing those notes if you believe you cannot write while you're talking, while you're facilitating. Otherwise, it's completely fine to you. It's up to you. How do you manage things? And as I said, before you share that, finalize that MOM, you have to summarize the key discussion points. Summarize as in you have to summarize and let the people know this is what is the summary and this is what I have captured. This is what I'm going to share with everyone. So that one is very important for you. And you also have to write the decisions and any action that we have been talking the moment we started this discussion, MOM. Keep writing the key decisions and actions. Do not miss any actions and key decisions. This is very important. Key points, if you miss one of them, that's okay. But this is not okay if you miss the key decisions and actions, because people will be looking at the response back on those decisions and actions. So you don't want to miss it. So please keep writing. And review the distribution. Review and distribute the MOM. Obviously, you have to review, and then you have to send that MOM. If you do not email those MOM back to those folks who joined, it doesn't make sense, So you have to review before you send, and you make sure you hit the send button as well, so that people get it and they can review and they can respond you back. And that is the only way you can use it as a reference point. If you did not send any email, people doesn't have that record. Down the line in the future, during execution of the project, you may not be able to use that document as a reference point or as a contract because you did not share. People will simply say, I don't know. I don't have any background and idea what you're talking all about. But if you have shared, made that official, you can use it. So this is very important for you to send as well, everyone. Even though if you're going ahead and documenting this to SharePoint or Confluence or any other tool, I would also recommend you send an email copy as well, so that it gives you a record, a proof, official proof that you have sent something to people. Right, I think too much talking. Any questions from any one of you in any of the slides, any of the topics before I move ahead?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
All right. So this is one of the sample that I have created. If you guys want, just comment, and probably I'll go ahead and link this Excel to the YouTube videos. You can download from there. Whereas, as I said, I need you guys to comment and let me know if you really need this format. I can upload in the Excel format. So this is a screenshot. This is something I have created and I always use in my projects. So if you carefully see, I have written the very first thing is a meeting reference. This could be a number as well. This could be some sentence as well. This is just a reference so that everyone is aware, and you or anyone who is looking at this note should be able to know, okay, what was the reference of that meeting? So let's say we have to write one MOM for 2 days training session that we are doing. So what should be the reference? I have written BA Essentials Part 3 training with Sajid. just a reference. This could be your subject line as well, summary line as well. Probably you can have some numbers as well, whatever works for you. Your company might be using some of the nomenclatures. You may want to use that or leverage it as well. It's completely open, and unless there's a company compliance, you can write the way that works for you and that makes easy for everyone to understand. You can write anything. So I have written BA Essentials Part 3 training with Sajid, and the date is today's date I've written here. And then who are the attendees? So I've written my name and then attendees 1, attendees 2, like your name. So you would want to write all the names, not attendees 1 and 2. I've written for an example. So you will write Sajid, person A, person B, person C, whatever, everyone's name there. And then if you have any external attendees, so you will write the name just in case any guest has joined your meeting. Anyone that who was not invited, you will write their names as well. And attendees that did not join. So who will be non-attendees in your case? If you have invited everyone, if you send the invite, you invite some people as a required and some as a mandatory, optional, required and mandatory, the same thing. So all these required people are your attendees, and optional, you may want them as an, I would say external or whatever, I don't know. But okay, just make it simple. Optional or mandatory, both are for your attendees. Write their names if they have joined. If anyone of them did not join, write in non-attendees, attendees absent, write their names. And then meeting agenda, you'll be writing what is the agenda of the meeting. So for us, what is the agenda? For us, we have a business analyst training and we have to review BA Essentials Part 3. That is our agenda of this meeting. So I've written that agenda there. Now coming back to the main section of this MOM. Key points that we have discussed. So I've written serial number. If you want, you can remove that section. Is completely up to you. How do you use it? And then you will start writing key points. So what are the key points we may have discussed today in this meeting? Number 1 I've written. Oh, I just copied and pasted in 2 and 3. I just missed writing number 1. So it's typo mistake. Number 2, it says reviewed BA Essentials Part 3 and understood what is MOM and how to create an accurate and complete minutes of meeting. This is what we have discussed. This was one of the key points we have discussed today. So that should be your key points. Second, I've written reviewed Requirement Traceability Matrix RTM that we will review in this training. And then we have a started BRD training, but we did not complete. Now, if you go to the right-hand side of the columns, I see there is responsibility and owner column. So if something is completed, I really don't mind writing the owners because that work has already been completed. I don't need to write. It's up to you. How do you write? If you would like to write, just write it. It's up to you. But for me, I don't really care if something has already been completed. And then there's no timeline because that is already completed. And a status I am saying completed. And the last one I'm saying is in progress. Okay, so now the next section of this MOM is action or carryover. So I did not want to create 2 different pages, so I have combined this action and carryover at one place to take a screenshot. You can have these 2 sections separately, one section for any action item and one for a carryover item. Now, what is the difference between these 2? Action is action. So what is the action for us here? We have to complete the BRD training. And what did we are targeting to complete? I've written April 1st, which is next weekend. We have to complete this BRD training by next weekend. Now, who is the owner? Who is responsible for this action? Sajid, is me who will be the ultimate accountable that I have to teach you guys, and you will always be accountable and one of the owners, trainees. If you do not join the meeting, if you do not show up, I will not be able to complete this training. So we all are the owners of this action. So whatever points you're getting during your meeting, you will see who will be the right person to work. Talk to the person, tell them without informing, do not write their names. Inform them, okay, hey, I'm going to write to make you as an accountable or as an action owner. Is that okay to you? Person will say yes, no, or probably say it differently. And then once you agree, you will write their names here. And then the status is open. This status is open, completely open. We have to still work on these things. So that's the action. Now, what is carryover? Let's say next week, we could not complete this BRD training, say with any XYZ miscellaneous reasons. So we will have this point as a carryover action item. We had something for this thing, but we could not complete, and now it is carrying over to the next training or next meeting. So that's all those items that we had some action date, due date, and we could not complete, and that is getting carried over to the next sprint or next meeting. That will be your points you will write under carryover sections. So carryover and action could be same points, could be different points. That depends upon the discussion what you're having with the team. Any questions on this one?
No, thank you.
Cool. So if you don't have questions, maybe I have questions for you. What is the main objective of minutes of a meeting? Read the options and give me one correct answer that you believe should be.
It's A.
A.
Okay, let's see what is the answer. It's A. Yes, you guys are correct. What is the main objective of minutes of meeting is to provide a record of what was discussed. So, cool. What are some key elements that should be included in minutes of meeting?
A.
Any
Yeah, it's A.
Only action items and deadlines discussion. Points, actually D.
D. Okay, let's see what is the answer. Okay, the answer is A. Attendees, agenda items, and decision mates. You will write everything in the minutes of meeting, not only action items and deadlines. That is one of the part of the, this MOM. If you have one action, you will write. If you do not have any action, you will still write the important points that you have discussed, along with who are the attendees, what is the agenda, and any decisions that you have made. So you will write everything here. You will not write personal opinions, irrelevant details, and non-essential information. So only discussion points will not be the good answer, because you also have to write the actions, and only action items is not true, because you also have to write the key points that you have discussed, and you will not want to write any personal opinions. So the correct answer is option A. The next part of this course is the requirement traceability matrix. This one is also very important for BA. As we have studied before, RTM is very important. Why? Because this gives you the reference point of the requirements. Like, what is the requirement? What is the source of the requirement? And what different elements in software requirement documentation this is going to be affecting. And you have the record for all those things. And you always review this either backward or forward. So this is very important. We have discussed this before as well, but let us go ahead and start from the scratch. So what is RTM? A requirement traceability matrix is a document that links project requirements to the related design, development, testing, and implementation activities in SRS. SRS is software requirement specification documents. We will discuss this in other classes. So the one document that you have created, you call it as a RTM, which will be like pure Excel document for you. And one document you have created, which is like a detailed technical explanation of all the requirements that you have captured, and that will be used by your development team, who will actually writing codes and developing the software. So there are two different documents, and these two documents are interlinked with each other. If you are into your Excel, and if you see one of the requirements, you can easily be able to go back to the SRS, that particular section specifically, and see what is the change you are making there with respect to design, development, testing, or anything there. This will be easy for you. If you do not know, let me tell you, SRS is like a big document. It's a Bible. It may be like 500 pages or 1,000 pages document. It might be like 20 pages as well. That depends upon the size of the requirement. So you will not have that much time to go to the SRS and like read 200 pages to find what exactly you need. So how would you make sure you don't waste your time, kill your time, and you get what you know in no time? So you need to have some reference points. So these two reference points will be written in your RTM, in your Excel document, and in your SRS, so that you can easily connect and find those points, link those points, and you can go ahead. So this is very important document. Now, RTM, it serves the purpose of providing clear and concise way of tracking things from each of these documents, as I told you. So that there has to be very clearly mentioned reference points or links so that you can easily come, find these reference points either from your RTM to SRS or from SRS to RTM. Situation could be anything. You might be reviewing something in your RTM, in your Excel, and you may want to see something, the reference point in your SRS. So you should be easily reaching to that point and see what is written there. Or just in case, if you're reviewing your software requirement documentation, any particular section with any of your team members, and you need to know what was the source of this requirement and what we actually did. So you can simply jump from that point to your RTM, and you can see what is the requirement and what was the source. So that linking should be really easy. So that is the ultimate purpose for you, to make it really concise and easy way to track things. An RTM typically includes a table that lists each requirement and its association, design, development, testing, and implementation activities. It means in your RTM, in your Excel, this will be like a tabular format data. You will have the RTM number, you will have the requirement descriptions, you will have the requirement number, and you also wanted to write what is the source of the requirement, and probably you will write, okay, is this going to impact the database change? Is this going to impact the graphical user interface change? Is this going to impact any other changes? You may want to write all those things in your Excel in a tabular format, and you would like to assign or associate those changes in your requirement specification documentation. Let's say you have a design change. So in the design section of that document, you will go and link these 2 points, so that when somebody is looking at the design change, the person would like to understand what was the source. The person can quickly pick your reference number, come to your RTM and see what was the source. Same goes to development changes, testing changes, or anything, any other changes. So this is the ultimate kind of a purpose of your this document, the RTM. It also provides you traceability links. Yes, obviously you may have links, as in it's not a URL. It's like not interconnected unless you have some software within your org that you're like doing on intranet and like linking with some links. You link, when I'm referring, is the numbers. Let's say I have requirement ID 101, say an example. So that 101 may have some of the requirement details, and that 101 I will go ahead in the SRS, and that particular section, the required section, I'll mention RTM ID 101 with that SRS ID. So SRS ID could be SR101. So SR101 has some impacts, on your design, on your code, on your test, or on your user manuals, anything. So how did this requirement come? So if I'm at the SRS SR101, and I would like to understand how this requirement has come up, I can simply pick that number, or RTM, or probably 101, can go to the RTM and see the details. Now, how does it look like? In the next slides, I will show you. I also have sample for this RTM that if you want, you can use it, or you can create your own. So that will make more clear to you. Here, what I'm trying to discuss here is, it's all about connecting and finding the reference points in these 2 documents. That's all. This will work as a communication and collaborations point for you. If you know what is the source of the requirement, if you know where and what different section this has made impact to the SRS document or your functionality, if someone is asking you, probably your managers, your business, or anyone, this will be really easy for you to facilitate that communication, because you know all those reference points, right? So you can simply go and pick information and you can tell them. You don't have to recall, memorize, and guess things, assume things, and answer. So these are some of the main points, key points, why RTM is very important and why BA is highly recommended to create one RTM for yourself. Now, you may ask me one question: is it really needed for me to create RTM when I have like one simple chain, one-liner chain that I can do in like a day or 2? The answer is no, you don't need to. You would only try to make this RTM if you have like a lot of changes are coming and there are a lot of things that you have to track here and there. Then you would want to create those RTM, not for like simple one-liner changes and one text changes, or maybe something that can be handled very quickly. That will be like additional effort, and you don't want to put additional effort for those small changes. You don't want to do that. In case of a bigger, larger project, you can use it. So having said, not all the projects you will be writing RTM. Probably you may not write RTM in throughout your career. This is true. Or you may see yourself writing one of these documents. So you have to understand the concept and the way, how do you write good RTM, so that if you come across a situation, you know what is this, and you should be in a situation to start writing those things easily without any problems and hesitations. So we have already discussed this as well. There are two types of RTM. One is the forward traceability and one is the backward traceability matrix. We have already discussed what is forward and what is backward, but let me help you recall and connect the dots. Forward as in, you're going from your RTM, your requirement traceability Excel matrix, to your requirement specification documents, SRS. That is called the forward traceability. I found one number in my Excel, and from Excel, I'm picking that link or number, going to the SRS, to the particular section and looking at the information. That I call it a forward traceability. Backward is the other way around. You are in your SRS, in any of the sections, maybe a design section or development section or coding section or testing section, whatever, or a functional requirement section. I'm just taking the generic names. You may not see development, testing, and implementation sections in your SRS. I'm just taking a generic example. Any of the sections you are in your SRS, the main point is you are coming from SRS to your RTM. It's called a backward traceability matrix. So in SRS, you have one ID number written. You pick that link, coming back to your RTM and going to that section and finding that link and reviewing the information. That what we call it the backward traceability. So forward from RTM to SRS and backward from SRS to RTM. And you can find anything, any links, any information for yourself, for your team, or for your business. That is what it is called, forward and backward traceability. So this is a simplest way for you to understand. Now, if you read these terms, these might be a little complicated and confusing to you, but what I'm trying to make a point here is, you have something to find in SRS and you got that reference in your RTM, and you're coming from RTM to your SRS, it's a forward traceability. And vice versa, if you're coming from your SRS to your RTM, it's called a backward traceability. And what are you going to find? Anything, whatever is required at that point in time for you. Clear? Any questions, any doubts on this one?
We use requirement traceability matrix only for SRS or both BRD or in SRS?
Traceability matrix is used throughout the project, but basically this is a reference point for the development and for the BA and for the business. So people prefer writing it into SRS, but there's no hard and fast rules. If that makes your job easy, that you would also like to have some connecting points in your BRD, go ahead and use it. Completely fine. In your traceability matrix, you can write those references as well. Let's say I have one page of a traceability matrix. I have 10 IDs. 7 could be routing me to SRS and 3 could be routing me to BRD. That's completely fine. It's like just a reference point. It doesn't matter what document are you using for. And as I said in day one in our training, RTM is like daily working sheet for the BA. You don't need to upload this to your business. You don't need to give it to your management unless there's a company requirement that all RTMs must be shared with the development team or must be uploaded to any of the tools. You are free to keep it with you as your personal document. This is for you. And what is the life cycle of this RTM? The moment you start the project, it starts. And the moment you get the sign up from the business after deployment or delivery of the project, this is done. You don't need this RTM. But as I said, this can be used anytime in future as well. Any other project team members going ahead looking at your project details and would like to see what was the reference, probably that point in time, that person might need your RTM to understand. So it is advisable that you also upload and make it public to your internal teams, not to business. Business has to do nothing with your RTM. Business might be asking you some questions, and you would need to use this RTM to find the reference point. That's all. Business doesn't need this RTM, so you don't need to share with business. So answer is yes, you can write whatever it makes your life easy and it makes you be more productive on the requirement gathering processes and taking it forward. Any other question?
During the requirement gathering, we create BRD, right? So when we create BRD, right, at the same time we have to create requirement traceability matrix.
Yes, this will be starting from day one. The moment you start writing the requirements, you would want to start writing this RTM, because this is giving you the reference point of the requirement. So it is advisable for you to start from day one of the requirement. And you will use this, revise this throughout your project lifecycle. It's not like one-time activity. It's like throughout the project cycle lifecycle activity. In every phases of the project lifecycle or software development lifecycle, you might be using this RTM. Add something, remove something, modify something. So answer is yes. All right, so let's move to the next slide. What are different benefits of using RTM? We have already discussed a lot of them, but let us see in little more detail. This will be like an improved traceability of the requirements. What does it mean? Improved traceability as in we have the reference points and we have the clear and concise understanding of the requirement sources, details, and we know what sections of the BRD this will be impacting. If we have collected all those information and documented, the traceability will be really easy for you. Now, this traceability is like a generic English word. You're tracing something, tracking, linking something. So that will be improved. Obviously, if I know the sources, if I have documented them very clearly, this will improve that traceability for me. So this is a help. If you do not have these things written, probably this will be really tough for you to find out all those key points, connect the dots, and give the accurate answers. This might not be possible for you. So always advisable to write these documents. And once you have all these things written clearly, well understood, well agreed, everyone knows, your planning and execution will be really easy for you. You will be in a good situation when you're planning the stuffs and controlling and monitoring during the execution, because you know all those reference points. You have linked them very effectively from backward, forward, everywhere. So when you do your planning and when you're executing things and you have to control something, and this will be easy for you. So an example, there's something you notice is not going in a correct way during the execution, and you would like to control things. You're monitoring, now you would like to control things. You can use these documents as a reference point so that you can win everyone's confidence. People will not see it as pushing or forcing to them. This will be like a contract, and you can use that reference point, you can review with the team, and you can take it forward as everyone's agreement. So this is very important for you as well, because this is serving you like a contract, like a reference point for you. This is very important. And obviously, this will enhance the communications and collaborations. Someone is asking you something from the development side, from the tester side, or maybe from the business side, and you have everything written already. You don't have to worry about that. You can simply go ahead, pick the information, form the sentences, and inform the team. So this will be like, this will enhance your communication and collaboration with all those teams. If you don't have these things written, just imagine, you may not be recalling or remembering everything. You're just a human being. You're not a supercomputer. People are asking something and you don't have any reference point. This will be really tough for you to make sense in your responses. People might oppose you, people might go against you, people might give some different reasonings, and you will not be able to justify all those things. So better you have those reference points written, documented. This will be easy for you. And this will also improve your quality and reliability. Obviously, the quality of the work will be really good because we know the sources, we know the reasons behind that, we know what different section this is going to be impacting, right? So whatever we are fulfilling as in we are delivering, we are completing those things, we will be clearly knowing what is the source, what is the customer expectation from the requirement. We know everything. So the quality will be definitely improved, and customer will more rely on those software or on those products. So one document can be used for different things, and these are the examples. In some of the companies, you have a compliance and auditability options as well, the teams as well, where they have to do all those things. So this RTM can provide you as one of the reference points as well. In some of the audits, probably there's a question raised to your team or to your documentation. There's some compliance or regulatory or maybe quality assurance is going on. So you will have the responses ready for you. You can go ahead and track those things in your RTM, and you can provide those information to those audit team so that you are at safe zone, at safe point. You don't have to worry about those non-compliant things. So this is very important for everyone to have these things written clearly and documented properly. Here's a sample. Very clear and easy sample. Traceability matrix you can write on your own. You can have like n number of columns. For me, I prefer writing the requirement ID. And what is this requirement ID? I can create on my own. Or if there's a company rule that you have to use this sequence of the numbers, say an example, your project name is, let's say, anything, like give any name, US. Your project name is US. Right? So your company might be asking you to use any requirement that starts that prefix with US. You will write US and then probably your tool name. Let's say your tool name is Amazon, say an example. So your company might be asking to use the numbers like this way, US AM01, so that everyone knows, okay, US as in this was done in the US and this is for Amazon project. So US AM01. US AM02. So an example, you can have additional numbers added. Probably within Amazon, we have specific project and that project has a specific name. So you will start with US AM and then initials of that project and then the number. So you don't have to worry about this numbering things. Your company might be providing you very clear and concise direction to use. If there's none, you can use whatever you want. It's just about creating some reference points so that you can use it in the future. Now, what is important with these numbers? This has to be unique. You cannot repeat these numbers. Example, if I have the same number for 5 different requirements, and those 5 different requirements are impacting 500 different sections in my SRS, if I'm going to use the same number at 500 different places, just imagine what will happen. You will not be able to find the exact answer because the same number is tagged to 500 different places. So this will give you all 500 details. Now you go ahead and read 500 sections and figure out what is you need. So this will be a mess for you. So you should always try to create these numbers unique. Don't repeat these numbers, just a unique number. One ID for one requirement for one reference, so that this will be easy for you. Second column, it has a requirement description. You will write like 1-2 liners description of the requirement. What is the ask? So here the ask is we have to create a new employee annual bonus table. That's one requirement. We would like to maintain an additional table where we would like to go ahead and add the employee's annual bonus that they will be given at the end of the year. So the business is asking to create a separate table. So I just written simple description. You might want to write like little more so that this is easy for everyone, but you don't want to write Bible here. Don't want to write like 500 pages or like 500 lines just to describe something, because ultimately this will be your redundant and duplicate work. The same thing you will be writing your business requirement document as well. So you don't need to write in really super detail, something that everyone can understand. That's all. And then what is the source of the requirement? So I have written business head. I got this requirement from business head. Now you would like to specify a little more. So you can write the names, department, the time when you discussed that particular scenario that you got this requirement. Perfectly fine. So that in future, let's say after a couple of years, if I go ahead and see this traceability matrix and see the source is business head, I may not be able to recall what does it mean by business head. So probably I would want to write something more that I can easily understand. So this template is just for the reference, and I'm also giving you the justifications behind why you should not write this and why you should not write this. So try to write reasonable things that this will be easy for you and for anyone who's looking at your report to understand things easily and connect things easily. No, they should not have to guess things. Now, the next columns I have written like design development activities. So what I'm trying to say here is in the SRS, or just forget about the SRS, this change will be impacting the design or some development activities. Now, what designs? Requirement 1, there will be change in the schema, database schema. Now, what is database schema? If you don't know, just forget about that. Leave it here. So there will be change in database schema. So I've written here. Now, how would you know where this change is going to be? Obviously, you are the BA, you are talking with business, and then again, you're going to your development team and talking to them. So development team will let you know what is the change this is all about, and you will start modifying, writing things. Initially, you will write based on your understanding, and then you will modify that based on your discussion with the different teams, your development team or whoever you're talking, and getting more ideas and more detailed insights about those requirements. You will keep updating these tables. And I'm also writing, okay, this change will also impact on the testing activities. So we will have to create test data something. I'm writing here. This will have impact on the implementation activities. We have to install to the new this change to the server. Obviously, if I'm making any changes, I will have to do testings. I'll have to deliver things. When I'm delivering in IT world, we install, we do deployments, installation to the server. So that is also there's an impact. Now, you may not write these columns at all. It's up to you. And it is depending upon the requirement. I have written this as a generic example. You may not write these 3 columns. You may write something else. Completely depends upon your understanding and how you can make it really easy to connect, find the dots, and get the references. That's all. It's up to you. You can use whatever format you like. You may want to add some more columns. You may want to remove the columns. Completely fine. Go ahead and do it. It's up to you. Or in some of the organizations, they have their format written already that you have to use that as per the company rules and regulations. That's perfectly fine. Go and use their templates. Move to the next column, traceability links. These are the IDs that I will be creating in SRS or the BRD, right? So in SRS, there's a section I'm writing this D01. So this D01 is a section where I have detailed this create new employee annual bonus table requirements. And I've given that number as a D01. So with this D01, I have REQ001. So I know when I'm looking at D01 or T01 or I01, all these 3 sections will have only one requirement ID, which is REQ001. So even I am at D01 section or T01 section or I01 section, I will have the same one number REQ001. And I can come back to this Excel, this RTM, and I can see the number, okay, this I01, T01, or D01 talks about creating new employee annual bonus table. And now this is the requirement. Now, what was the source of the requirement? Okay, this came from the business head. And these were the different sections it has impact on, right? So D01 is the development. So probably development guys will only see D01. T01 is something talking about the testing. So the testing folks will be looking at T01. They may not be able to know if there's any I01 impact as well. They may not know. But when they come to this Excel, RTM, they will also know, okay, this is not only us. This has also impacted the development and any other XYZ teams, which is I01. Got it? So this is how you write things so that it becomes really easy for you. So now let us, in our example, in the case of forward traceability, I am here right now in this Excel and I'm looking at REQ001. From here, I have to go to my SRS. So what are different sections I can go to the SRS is D01, T01, I01. So I'll go to the SRS, directly jump to these 3 sections, and I can see the details. What technically things has happened there. Now, example of backward traceability, I'm in the SRS and I'm at D01, and I would like to see what is the source of the requirement. So I would see, okay, D01 is linked with REQ001. I'll go back to REQ001, and I can see all those details. So having said, like in RTM, we are writing the trace links. Similarly, in the SRS, we will also write these requirement IDs, the RTM requirement IDs. Correct? So this REQ001, you can also start writing RTM001, RTM002. Is completely up to you. How do you make things simple for everyone? And you can name those things, write those things in that way. Questions?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Cool. Okay, so I have a question for you. What is the purpose of a requirement traceability matrix, RTM? Read the options and give me one right answer.
C.
Any other answer?
It's B, to track changes to the.
It's D.
Document project risks.
C and B. Okay, let's see what is the answer. The answer is C, to ensure that all project requirements are fulfilled. Fulfilled as in, what is the ultimate purpose of the requirement? Whatever requirement we're capturing, that has to be delivered or completed. And those tracking things, looking at those details are the supporting things of fulfilling the requirement. The ultimate goal is to deliver things. And to successful delivery, we would like to have some the trace points. So this is the answer. It's actually a tricky question, but don't worry. The ultimate goal is to fulfilling. I got some requirement. What should be the ultimate response of responsibility of the requirement? We have to deliver things. See, in order to deliver, we'll do a lot of things. And these tracking things backward, forward, documenting, source, these all are supporting part of those fulfilling of the requirements. The ultimate goal is we have to make sure all project requirements are delivered. So today we are going to study in detail about the BRD, Business Requirement Document. This document is one of the most important documents in software industry or in a BA lives. This is the document where, as a BA, you will capture every detailed business requirement. Say it a functional requirement, non-functional requirement, any user interface requirement, hardware requirement, software requirement, assumptions, constraints, dependencies, everything in detail. This is the only document that you will be writing for the business. This document actually serves as a contract between the development team and the business. This document will serve you like a great purposes in different things, like for the project planning things. If we have the requirement gathered in detail, based on the requirement, the project manager will go ahead and plan things further. Like what resources do we need to complete the project, what timeline is going to take, what is the budget is going to look like, and we need in this doc for the project. So this document will serve the purpose because everything will happen once we know what needs to be done. If we are not clear on the requirement, we will not be able to plan things further. So in order for us to plan things further and execute and monitor and control and close that project, we need to have a great BRD written. So as I said initially, this is going to be one of the most important documents for you, and you will see yourself mostly working on this document. So you have to be really focused on this class. And when you practice writing BRDs, you have to be really focused on writing a great BRD. Now, what do you mean by great BRD? What is the qualities of a good BRD? What we should use, what we should not use, like, consider, do not consider, avoid. We will study everything in this class. And I'm also going to give you some sample document so that you can use it. So let's start. Let's see, what is a BRD? A business requirement document is a formal document that outlines the business requirements of a software development project. It typically includes a detailed description of the problems that needs to be solved. Obviously, the problems as in the requirement. Requirement could be a problem statement as well. Could be something new, could be some existing things that we have to modify. So this document details everything for the business and for the development team. Now, on top of that, we can also create a system requirement document, which is SRD or SRS, which is like nothing but the technical translation of this business requirement documentation. So some of the companies, they use SRD separately. Some of the companies, they do not. They just simply go by the BRD and they start moving towards the solution part of those things. Once the BRD is signed off, they start working on the solutions and other stuff like what cost is going to take, what time is going to take, and how and what solution are going to provide you. So they can start working on this BRD itself. They don't need SRS. Some of the org, they also have the SRS. So it's just nothing but a little bit technical version so that you can technically detail things there for your development team. So a BRD is very important in software development projects that we have just said. It serves as a critical communication tool between the business stakeholders and the development team. Obviously, business is asking something, business is going to go and review something, development team is going to go and review something. This is the only document where everybody will be coming and looking at the information. So this serves as a great communication tool. Since everybody is working on this common ground, the common goal of the software project, so everybody will be like, kind of involved around this document only. Everybody will be here coming, and they will all have a common understanding of what needs to be delivered and what need not to be delivered, both of them. This document tells everything, what is in scope and what is not in scope. So this document should clearly define what business needs, should clearly define, no vague terms, nothing miscellaneous kind of thing, nothing unclear. Everything has to be clearly defined. What is the scope? What is the objective? What goals are we going to achieve after, from this project? This document should tell you everything very clearly written. And you also need to write what is not in scope. If you write what is not in scope, this will help you avoid scope creep. Now, what is scope creep? We have discussed this a lot in the previous class, but let me give you one example. Scope creep is like frequently changing of the requirement. Let's say a business has given you something, and now during the project, during the execution phase, business is asking you to add something, right? And business doesn't want to go with that change management processes. So what will happen if you accept? This will be called as a scope creep. Now there's another term, gold plating. Gold plating is nothing but the same thing coming from the development team. You or a BA, your development team is trying to give something more that business will be really happy. However, that is not the actual ask from the business, and you're still going to go ahead and add, considering this will not impact your quality, timeline, cost, and everything. Even though this will not impact, this will be considered as a gold plating, that you're trying to please and happy someone. This is a big no in the software industry, so should not do this thing. So this document will help you prevent all those scope creeps and probably gold platings, because we have written, agreed, approved what needs to be done. So this document is very important. I'm just giving you some of the good examples. And obviously, as I said, once we have the requirement captured, understood, now we can plan how long it's going to take to complete the project, what resources we need, right? What is the high level budget, or maybe the detailed budget planning can also be done based on the requirements. So these are some of the high level points that I've given you. What is BRD and why this BRD is important? Now let's go and see in detail about different sections of this BRD. So what are some key components of a BRD? Before I go ahead, let me give you a very clear understanding. A BRD may have a lot of sections. Not all the companies are going to use every section of the BRD. This is completely configurable. This depends on what company are you working and what document version or what document type they're using. Different companies may have a different style of this document. Even sometimes, if you see within one company project base, the team uses a different version of the documentation. Now, some of the companies, they have a different department, they work on the documentation and they release an approved format of the documentation that everyone has to use within the company, no matter what. So you'll be using that document, and that document may have different sections. Some of the org, they have that flexibility that teams can change the documentation. They can add, remove some of the sections. Perfectly fine. Having said, wherever you are working, you have to make sure you're complying with the company policies and company documentation processes. Simple thing. Now here in this class, we are going to look at some of the key elements that you may find common across all the documentation wherever you are working, right? So on a high level, a BRD may contain, the background of the project, the scope of the project, assumptions, business goals, executive summary, all those things. Let us see some of the main common things, common elements that you will always find in most of the documentation wherever you work, doesn't matter. So it has one section that called executive summary. Now, you may not find this executive summary everywhere in all the documentation. Some of the companies, they may have this. Executive summary is written for the executives. Executives as in the senior management group. And as I said, senior management group, the senior management will not have that much time to go ahead and read the whole documentations. So what normally we come up with like a one-page statement. Within one page, we try to explain on a very high level what is the project all about, what is the purpose of this project, what are the different goals and objectives we are going to achieve once this project is done, completed, and what is the scope of this project. This summary may also include a high-level budget and high-level time, and may not include as well, because this is going to be a business requirement document and business will review it. So I'm not sure who this executive is. If this executive is from the business side, probably we may end up writing those high-level budgets and everything. If this is being written for the internal software development team, probably we may not write all those high-level budgets and everything. But time high-level, I don't see any problem writing high-level time. Now you may ask, we are in a process of requirement gathering. How would we know what time is going to take? We don't know what is the requirement all about. We'll have to analyze things and see. That's true. It's a ballpark effort, right? It has like, minus plus 75% variation, somewhere minus plus 50% variation, somewhere minus plus 25% variations. So you always have that variation in place when you're giving a high level or, like a helicopter view of all those assessments, how long it's going to take. It's like a ballpark effort, not a final effort. And then we will have a background section. This background section will tell what was the background of this project, why this project has come, what was the business need that we wanted to achieve, any industry specific needs, anything that has brought this project into picture. So we have to document all those things in the background so that whoever is reading the document can understand, okay, these are the reasons why this project has come into existence, and this is the reason why are we going ahead and working on this project. Now we have some business goals and objectives. Obviously, what is the objective we are going to achieve? What is the business goals after this project? This section will explain them in detail. When the project is completed, these are some of the objectives we will be achieving. This is the business goal we are going to achieve. And that goal could be anything that depends upon what project you're working on. And the section of detail will change depending upon the nature of the project. Scope. This is a very important section. I believe a scope is something you will find. This will be like common across the documentation. What format you're working, where you're working, doesn't matter. You always have to write the scope. This is the ultimate purpose of this document, to write what is in a scope and what is not in a scope. So this scope section will tell in detail what is in a scope and what is something we are not going to achieve and complete. Now, under the scope section, there could be various subsections. And within those subsections, you will fill up all those details. In some of the documentation, what I have seen is people have functional and non-functional requirements within the scope, like subsections. Like, let's say section 1 is scope, section 1.1 could be functional requirement, section 1.2 could be non-functional requirement. I've also seen some of the documentation where these are written separately. Scope is just telling on a high level in plain, simple English language, what is something we are going to achieve. And any specific thing that as a BA you would like to highlight, these are something we will not achieve purposefully. Now, why would you write all those things? I have given you the example before. Let me just revise your memory. Say an example, a business has given you one of the requirements as a mandatory requirement, and you did your research analysis with the team and you found out there's some technical dependencies. We cannot do that piece of the work, the requirement. We cannot deliver. You came up with some containment, some workaround, and you explained the business, okay, this is something we cannot do because this has this technical dependencies. However, I'm going to go ahead and do this thing for you who will moreover the same thing, but in a different way. Business might say yes to you. So you would specifically want to write that thing, okay, this is not in scope. Because you don't want to see the surprises during the UAT, user acceptance testing. Business can tell you, hey, I gave you that requirement, why I don't see it here? You will not have proof to back up your team and yourself. So you need to write those things specifically. Okay, this is not in scope. Or anything, even business is not giving you, but certainly this is going to come up in the future. And that is not possible technically. So you would go ahead and specify those things. So long story short, you will not write everything which is not required. You will only write those things under not in scope where you believe or you have encountered those situations that, okay, this is going to come up. So let me better explain clearly in the documentation so that everybody has the same understanding. This was actually the request, but we have said no to this because of these reasons, so that you're safe, your team is safe, and your project is safe. So that is the reason why you would want to also write what is not in the scope. Now you will have a functional requirement section. This section will tell the main functionality of the software that you are going to achieve, the main functions of that product or that software. We have given many examples, like let's say your project is pen. So what is the main function of pen? Pen should write. So that writing is a main function. So you will write as one of the functional requirement, this pen should write. Now, you will also write non-functional requirement. In the same example, you will write the as a non-functional requirement, like the pen should write blue, the pen should write in red, the pen should any color, or maybe you can also define the thickness. This should not be more than 0.2 mm or whatever. So every requirement that is supporting the main functional requirement becomes a non-functional requirement. Having said, these non-functional requirement may not have direct impact on the functionality. This will support that main functionality. So that is called non-functional requirement. So you will have different sections in the documentation where you will write in detail all the functional requirements that is required from the business. And you will also write all non-functional requirement that is supporting the main functional requirements. This is very important for you to write non-functional requirement as well. So under functional requirement documentation, you may end up writing simple, plain language, English language, the text that people can understand. And it is also highly advisable that you write some of the, the diagrams, which will help understand more about the requirement. So whenever you find an opportunity, try to add some diagrams, wireframes, could be some simple UI diagrams, could be some use case diagrams, maybe sequence diagrams. This is what you will study in UML when you will study them probably next couple of weeks. So those are very important and advisable to add if you can. If not needed, do not try to overload things just for nothing. This one-liner statement requirement, and any diagrams are not required, and you unnecessarily trying to add things. Don't do this. Do only when it is required. And when it is required, do not avoid and skip it. Do it. Some sections could be like acceptance criteria, assumption, dependencies, and constraints. Now, acceptance criteria is nothing but what measures and what terms the business will be accepting those requirements. Those could be acceptance criteria. Acceptance criteria may directly be dealing and talking, or maybe the copy of the functional requirements. Say an example, in our example, the pen example, the pen should write. Acceptance criteria should be the pen should write. The same thing, Obviously, if pen doesn't write, this will not be accepted. True, that could be directly a functional requirement written into acceptance criteria. Could be different as well. Say an example, I am saying I need a pen, some specific brand. I need a pen that should write, but that pen should belong to some specific brand. That is my acceptance criteria. So you brought the pen, right? You gave me the pen is writing, everything is fine, but the pen doesn't belong to the brand I wanted. So I will not accept, the business will not accept that pen. So that acceptance criteria also includes, apart from writing features, this should belong to a certain brand. I just give you a generic example. This may not be a perfect example here. I just give a generic example. Another example, the same brand thing. Business wants you to buy a phone. Buying a phone is a project, not building. So business said, okay, the mobile should have 100 gig space minimum, 8 gig memory, and blah, blah, all those things. And the mobile should belong to a specific brand. You brought the phone, which does actually the way business wanted, but that doesn't belong to the specific brand. Business will not accept it. Because based on the brand, the costing will change. Business is paying you, your project manager will do a cost estimation based on the brand and will give business. Business is paying you based on that assumption that you will give them that specific brand. However, the phone is working fine, but doesn't belong to the specific brand. There will be a conflict and business will not accept. So under acceptance criteria section, you will try to write all those things. Based on that, the business will accept those changes or those products or those MVPs, whatever. So having said, just to summarize, acceptance criteria may have directly all the functional requirements. may have written things differently. So that should be very much clearly written under acceptance criteria section. Otherwise, the project will be a trouble when you are going here and trying to deliver and doing a demo. Business may like ask you so many things that you will not have proof. So it is very important for you to also write the acceptance criteria agreed and approved from the business and from the team. Now, acceptance criteria should always be reviewed by the team as well. Business can ask you anything. Business can ask you, okay, deliver this phone to the moon. The development team cannot go to the moon or Mars to deliver things. So those acceptance criteria will not be accepted. So it is very important for you to understand what is business acceptance criteria, and also, is that technically possible? Is a reasonable ask? And how would you know? You have to go ahead and talk to your development team, and they will let you know if this is technically possible or not. And based on everyone's agreement, you will write that acceptance criteria, not only from the business, not only from the you, and not only from the development team. This has to be mutually agreed. That is very important for you to write. Now, acceptance criteria could be for the functional requirements and for the non-functional requirement as well. Let's say you have one section that says functional requirement, and you have 10 different functional requirements written. You may write 10 different acceptance criteria for each of those functional requirements in a section. Let's say I'm writing one section, section 1.1.1, that says acceptance criteria of the functional requirements. Now, within that, in each of the functional requirements, you will define what is the acceptance criteria and what basis this particular piece of the functional requirement will be accepted. You will write everything. Same goes to the non-functional. You will write the acceptance criteria for the non-functional requirement as well. Now, you don't always have to write all those things in detail. It depends on what kind of project you're doing. You may not even write a single thing in the document. It completely depends upon the nature of the project. You may write, you may not write. So here we are learning, if we have to write, how would we write and what we should consider. Now, there could be some assumptions and dependencies. Assumptions is like assuming. You assume some of the things, they're not clear at the beginning of the project when you're capturing the requirement. There are a lot of things that is not clear from the business. So you assume things and you will write those assumptions so that business is also aware and everybody's on the same page. Assumptions could be anything. Let's say I'm assuming the project will be delivered in agile way of working. Say an example, business did not tell you, okay, business is not sure this will be agile or waterfall, but based on the project nature, you believe, okay, it looks like this will be done in agile way of working. So you will write those assumptions there. Now, assumptions might change. Assumptions might not impact your functional and non-functional requirement. It may also impact. That completely depends. I cannot give you like step-by-step thing that, okay, if you do step 1, 2, this will not impact. If we do step 3, 4, this will impact. No, I don't have answers in that way. Assumptions, it's just assumption. We're assuming things, and assumptions might change anytime. So whenever you write this documentation, whenever you write the assumption, you have to write in a way that doesn't impact your the scope of the project. So you have to be very careful when you're writing the assumptions. Assumptions could be anything during any phase of the requirement. Could be functional requirement, could be non-functional, could be interface. You may have assumptions, and you would want to write all the assumptions in details in different sections. There could be some dependencies. Let's say we have to test something, but the test data is only accessible to the business. As a developer, we do not have those data. So what we are saying, we are writing in the dependencies sections. In order for you to deliver things on time, we have to test these functional requirements by this time to achieve the target completion, the project completion date. But we have dependencies on the data, and data must be provided by business by this time. So you will write all those dependencies in detail. Business has to provide this set of data by this date in order for us to complete the testing and deliver you on time. So this is the dependencies. You will also write, if the data is not being provided, this might impact the project delivery timeline. So those dependencies you will have to write very clearly. Let's see if you do not write. Business is not agreeing on that. Business has not given you the sign off. And during the UAT, even though you're right, you don't have the data from the business to test, you could not complete the testing. Business is not going to accept that excuse. Business will say, you promised to deliver at this time and you are late. There could be some penalties as well based on the contract your company has signed. So in order for you to avoid those situations, you will make sure you're writing all those dependencies as well. It's very important. I give you one example. Dependencies could be anything depending upon the project you're working on. Make sure you find out all the dependencies, talk to your business, talk to your development team, You do your own research analysis and see what dependencies you believe should be there and write everything. And you will review with business, with team, and probably you will like remove, add, modify something. The ultimate goal is to have all these assumptions and dependencies written clearly if there is any. If there's no, you're fine. But if there's even a single thing, you have to write. Constraints is like more or similar to the dependencies, but it's not directly dependencies. So an example, we have a resource constraints. I know some resource limitations are there. There's the one key resource who is already working in some of the other project, and we are assuming that resource will be released by this time and it's going to start working for us. But however, we have a constraint. If the resource is not being assigned on time, the project might delay. So that is a constraint you will write. Let's say business is asking a lot of things, but your management is not giving you that budget. And as a project manager, someone has come up with a budget and that is not in sync with the budget we have been assigned. So that is also a constraint. You would want to write in detail. Probably your project manager will help writing all those constraints. This document is being reviewed by everyone. So when your project manager will review this document, he or she will see, okay, there is a constraint that is directly dealing about the budget. So the person will go ahead and write that constraint for yourself or on your behalf. On his behalf, you may also write, or her behalf, you may also write. So that constraint will tell everything about the budget. Having said, this project may get delayed. We may have to do things differently because we have a budget constraint. And we may have some regulatory requirements. Let's say you are working on a software that you have seen a risk that some regulation is going to change from the government body in future. And that might also impact your project. And you may have to like change some of the scope of the project just because of those regulatory requirements. You will also write all those things in detail because you don't want to see you and your team in a situation where people are pushing you and asking you, you have not done this thing before, you have not done this thing clearly. So you would want to write and specify clearly so that everyone has the same understanding and we are not in a conflict situation when we are trying to deliver or doing the UAT with business. So these are very important things you have to write and consider. All right, any questions on this key components? Now, these are, as I said, these are some of the key components. It doesn't mean these are the only components of the BRD. You may end up seeing like 50 or more than 50 key components. These are the key components that you will see common across all the documentations. Now, what else we will see in detail in next slides. So before I move ahead, any questions as of now?
Yeah, I had a question. Like you told earlier, as in the project, we do not have to assume anything. Then why do we need to include assumptions in the BRD?
Good question. There's some known unknowns, there's some unknown unknowns. There's some assumptions that we have to make. When I said we should not assume, as in when you're writing a documentation, you're writing a requirement, and you came up with something that you believe based on your experience. Oh, I assume this will be done. I know business will accept this. I assume development team can take care of that. So those assumptions, I said, do not do this. Better you go and talk to your business. Better you go and talk to your development team and then try to document everything. You should not write assumption. Development does not happen on your assumption or anyone's assumption, even from the business side, even from the development side. If they assume something, okay, this is something that's very pretty simple, people can accept and do things and take care. Those assumptions are big no. But when you write some of the documentation, some of the requirements, you have to assume something. Say an example, you ask business, I'm just repeating my example. What do you think, are you going to work on a traditional waterfall way of working or an agile way of working for this project? Business is not clear at that time. But you, based on your interaction with business, you have seen businesses like frequently changing the requirement. Business doesn't know in detail what is business actually want from this project. So based on the nature of the project, or based on the nature and based on your experience, you may assume, hopefully this will be done in agile way of working, because agile is the only way where we can deal with frequent changes, where business is not clear on the requirement. Business even doesn't know, business might change this requirement in future. So better we should be going to agile. So you will assume, okay, I'm assuming this project will be done in agile. So those kind of assumptions, you have to write, specify so that everyone knows. And the assumption you're talking is something no one knows. You just assume something and you went ahead and then you found yourself at trouble. Assumptions should be written so that everyone knows, okay, these are assumptions that we are doing. Those things I said we have to write. Any other question?
And those assumptions can be cleared out during the meetings?
Yes, obviously. I said this will always be changing. Assumptions are assumptions. We assume something, and during the in let's say you in one of the meetings or in middle of the project requirement gathering processes, you found businesses answered your question. Okay, you know what? Can you remove this assumption? We are sure we are going to go ahead and deliver things in agile. So you will write that somewhere in the documentation. This will be done in an agile way of working. I'm just giving a generic example. It could be anything. So you will remove that assumptions once it is done. Or if you have written somewhere and you have created different version of the documentation, so you would not want to remove as well. You can simply grade it out, strike through, or write something else so that people know, okay, this was the before assumption. Now it is not an assumptions. This all depends how you make that document easy to understand. So once it is cleared, that assumption will not be an assumption. That will be removed, strike through, or highlighted in different colors so that people know this was assumption. Now this is not an assumption anymore.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so next we have the characteristics of a good BRD. It is very important to write clear, concise BRD. It is very important. If you do not write this documentation clearly, if you do not specify things clearly, if this is vague, people is not able to understand, there's no way of writing the BRD. So let us see what are some of the examples of the good BRD. This has to be very clear and concise. You should not write technical jargons. Business may not understand your technical jargons. And the purpose of the BRD is to make sure everyone understands what we need. So try to avoid technical jargons, or try to avoid like the complex and compound sentences and languages that no one understands. Make it simple. That's a funda. Make it simple. If you're writing something, in a way that co-technical or probably a different level of English language that no one understands, what do you mean by that? You're using those high fancy words that no one is aware about those things. You should avoid writing all those things. Make it simple. The only funda is make it very clear, very simple, and very concise that everyone can easily understand things. So that is one of the good characteristics of a BRD. That has to be complete and consistent. You would want to make sure you're writing all possible requirements. Everything is included. You don't want to miss anything. Otherwise, you will be in trouble during the UAT. Sometimes business doesn't give you the whole requirement. Based on your research, your analysis, your discussion with business and the team, you come up with things and you inform business, hey, I think you also need this thing. And then business adds those things in the requirement. So as long as it is not signed off, you're in process of writing this documentation, you may always change things there. Once it is signed off baseline, you will not. So make sure that is complete and consistent. What do you mean by consistent? Consistent as in, let's say if you're writing the same requirement at two different places, they have to be in the same manner, same language, and same understanding. You should not conflict the same requirement at two different places. Same example, business said the pen should write blue. Now, in the other example, you're writing light blue or dark blue. That is conflicting. The one place you have written just blue and other place you have written dark blue or light blue or navy. This is not good. You have to be consistent. If you're writing navy, you write navy everywhere. So that has to be very consistent. You should not be writing like one place blue, one place red. So that has to be consistent. Otherwise, this will create a big problem for you. So complete and consistent is very important. Now organize. You have to organize things. Organize as in if you're writing in a raw matter, everything is like here and there, spread all over the place. Business will not be able to understand and read it clearly. If I'm not able to read something clearly, I will not be able to understand those things. Having said, you should want to use like logical structures. You like headings, subheadings, use bulleted points, highlight things, underline things, so that it is easy for the people to navigate and understand the information what you're providing there. That is also very important. Like you see my notes here, I've written like main headings, some headings, and I've also written continues. That tells you, okay, we are continuing the business requirement document, the training. Now you see I have written the definition in a different font, different size. Now these sections are in red, and then I have bulleted these points. This is what I'm talking in organized way. So if you do not write in an organized way, this will not be easy for someone to understand, and that will also create problem. They may understand or interpret things differently. So you should not do those things. Use visuals. As I said, whenever it is possible, you should write some charts, some diagrams, some any visual aids that makes it easy to understand for anyone who is looking at those requirements. You may come up with some UI diagrams, just simple diagrams that of how this is going to look like. You may come up with some use cases. Now, since this is a business requirement documentation, you do not want to write all those technical diagrams, like DFG diagrams, all those class and object diagrams. Business may not understand things, right? So write only those visuals that is easy for the business to understand and easy for anyone who is looking at this business requirement documentation. Use case is a perfect example. You can always write use cases. Any sequence diagrams, any the state diagram, activity diagram. These diagrams are something you can use in your BRD. These are nothing but like simple flow of the data. You will tell them how the data will flow and what will be the different stages and phases of the requirement. And you can also, as I said, work with your UI UX team, and they can also give you some of the details in form of the diagrams. You can also add there. So whenever you find an opportunity, try to add those things. Review and refine. As soon as you complete capturing all the requirement, make sure you're reviewing it with your development team, with your business, and as needed, you have to revise things, change things. And you have to keep doing this by the time you're not getting signed off. So it is very important for you to keep reviewing this with different group of the people. That includes your business as well. Check the feedback and try to improve things. And you would want to make sure your stakeholders, your business feedback is considered. A stakeholder could be anyone, but the business feedback is very important because they are the one who will provide the sign off, and they are the one who are actually going ahead and accepting that project. So this is very important for you to review with them as well and consider their feedback, revise the documentation, change the language, and then once everything is done, you need to take the sign off from them, and then only you can move forward with the next steps of the software development. Right. So here's an example of the requirements. The data set will contain an end of file character. This is ambiguous. We don't know what does it mean. It doesn't tell us in detail. The product should have a good human interface. This is again non-verifiable. How would you verify? What do you mean by good human interface? So if you're writing this kind of requirement, you should avoid writing. These are not clear statements. The program shall never enter an infinite loop. What does it mean? What the hell are you talking about? What do you mean by that? I don't know. I cannot verify these requirements. So should not write this kind of requirement. This has to be clearly defined. The output of the program shall usually be given within 10 seconds. What do you mean by shall usually be given? You're assuming things, right? So let's say if it is going to 12 seconds, business will not accept this. So avoid writing in this way. Now, what is a good example? The last one, the output of a program shall be given within 20 seconds of the event 60% of the time. That's cool. 60% of the time, the requirement should be delivered within 20 seconds. That's fine. Good example. Get it?
Yes.
So ultimately, what I'm trying to say here is whatever you're writing, that should be very pretty clear, understood easily, and that should not be vague and unclear or like in a way that people have to guess what do you mean by that. Say an example, the first one, the data set will contain an end of the file character. What does it mean by end of the file character? It's not clear actually. So whenever you're writing the requirements, you have to make sure you're writing very clearly so that people understand that. Say an example, the last one, the output of a program shall be given within 20 seconds of the event 60% of the time. So it clearly says 60% of the time, business wants the output within 20 seconds. So if your developer will see this requirement, he or she will go ahead and try to write a code so that not only 60%, probably 100% of the time, it is giving you within 20 seconds. So this will be easy for them to understand. Now, if you just say within 10 seconds, usually be given within 10 seconds, what do you mean by usually be given? It's not clear. It's a vague term. So as a BA, we should avoid writing these kind of sentences in our requirement. We have to be very pretty clear. It's like spoon feeding, write in very clear, easy to understand language. Try to explain things in detail. Don't assume people will understand the way you're writing now. You have to make sure they understand things. So write very clearly in detail, simple, plain English language. And as a BA, you have to write a lot. Writing is one of your key skill sets. So don't avoid writing. Keep writing. Give a full detail of every requirement. All right. Examples of a bad BRD. We just have studied what are the good examples. Now we will see what are the bad examples. Obviously, it's like vice versa. Whatever we have done there, if you're not doing there, that will be a bad examples of BRD. So as we know, it is very important to have a good BRD written. If you do not have a good BRD written, this will have a significant impact on the success of the project. And we know why. We have studied before. So if you're not writing things in a structured way, your document is unstructured or poorly organized, what will happen? This will be difficult to change. Say an example, tomorrow, if you are going to make some changes and if you have not written things in a proper way, in an organized way, you have not given sections names, numbers, bulleted, this will be even a nightmare for you. Even though you have written the document, this will be a nightmare for you to go and change those sections. That will be really difficult to change for anyone. This will be difficult to navigate to the correct section of the requirement. Let's say as a business stakeholder, I wanted to see what are the different functional requirements. And in your documentation that is not written in a proper way, I will not be able to reach out and navigate to that point. This will be tough for me. And if I do not read it correctly, this will be difficult for me to understand. So this is very important for you to have things structured and well organized. If you don't have the headings, subheadings, bullet points, how would you make the document look good? It makes sense, understood. So you have to make sure you're doing those things properly. So if you do not have things structured or unorganized, that will be one of the classical example of your bad BRD. Lack of clarity, you're failing to communicate the project requirement. What is the requirement, the actual requirement? If that is not being effectively conveyed to the reader through that documentation, that will be not considered as a good BRD. I'm reading your documentation, but I do not understand what do you mean by those things. What are you saying? If I cannot understand, that means the clarity is missing. So you have to make sure writing very clear things so that people understand. And as I said, you should avoid writing like ambiguous or incomplete information. We have just seen the examples. So those were the bad examples, So if your documentation is not clear, it is incomplete, that will be considered as a bad BRD. Missing or inaccurate information. Obviously, you are not providing all required details, or even though whatever you have written is not clear or not complete, that is also a problem. This will definitely create a scope creep, because if something is not clear, information is missing, it is inaccurate, obviously business is going to change things. And the moment business changes, business is not going to pay you, and business is not going to wait longer for you to come to the change management process and do things, deliver things, and business is not going to pay you. So this is ultimately be a scope creep, and this will be something you as a BA will be accountable. So you have to make sure you're writing things very clearly, accurate, no missing piece of the information in any of your requirements. Inconsistent, contradiction, I have told you before. Contradiction, like, is inconsistent. The same thing you're describing in a different languages at different places. Don't do these things. If you have same thing, if you have to write by any chance one common thing at so many different places, you will ensure you're writing in a same way everywhere. Do not try to describe differently at different places. That will not be a good idea for you, because at one place I may read that differently, other place I'm reading that differently. I may interpret it or take the output differently. This will be a confusing for me, so don't do this. And again, use of different terms for the same concept, making it difficult for stakeholders to understand. Obviously, the same thing, the same concept, and you're writing differently, you're using different terms. That is again a big no. Don't do this thing. You're writing unfeasible or unrealistic requirements. Sometimes business might give you unfeasible or unrealistic requirement that cannot technically be achieved. You're still writing. That is a big no. Don't do this. You have to explain business why this is unrealistic, why this is not feasible. You have to come up with the justification. The justification could be technical, non-technical, or anything. The only point here is you have to justify why this is not possible. You don't want to sound like, I don't want to do this. You would like to sound like it cannot be done. There's a huge difference. Don't sound negative. Okay, no, I cannot do this, or I don't want to do this. It's not about I don't want to do this. It's about it's not possible technically. So why it is not possible technically, you have to give the justification. So whenever you get the unfeasible or unrealistic requirements, talk to your development team. Try to find out what is something we can do differently. Is there a way we can deliver things not the way business wants, but probably in a different way? And then based on your research, you go back to business and tell them and document those things clearly in your business requirement document. Do not try to simply take unfeasible or unrealistic requirement because business is pushing you or whatsoever the reason. Don't do this. If you're doing it, it's a bad example and it is not a good BRD. And obviously, if you do not have acceptance criteria, we have studied before what is acceptance criteria and what is the importance. If you do not have the acceptance criteria, this will be really difficult to measure on what basis business is going to accept these things. You will be in trouble, your team will be in trouble. So you make sure you're writing good acceptance criteria, functional requirement, and what criteria based on those business will be accepting those functional or non-functional requirements. You have to write very clearly. If you're not writing, that will not be a good example of a BRD. Here's a sample. As I said, I'll give you one sample. This sample is not written by me. This is written by IEEE. There's one of the organization that has suggesting a lot of good documentation, and these are free to use. Everybody can use it. So what happens normally, companies, they take reference from this documentation and they create their own version. So in simple, there's no one common document that is being used across organizations. No, this is technically not possible. Every company works differently. Every team works differently. So they may have to modify things that fits well for their nature of the project. So there's no one common business requirement document that you can master and you can use everywhere in all your companies. Probably you might be using the same document in all your projects within the same organization, but not possible to do that. You will be using the same document in all the organizations. So every org may have a different version of the documentation. That's what I've written here. There's no one size fits all format for business requirement documentation. What does it mean? It means there's no any one single document that can be that can fit for every company's requirement. It's technically not possible. So what they do, they refer these sections and they come up with their own section. They may add something new, they may remove something new, they may reorganize things, they may have something at the top, they may move something at the back, at the bottom, I meant. So these are some of the fields that you might be using differently in different companies. Now on the format, I believe you don't have to worry more about that because every company has one format and that you will find in their repository. Most of the CMMI level 5 companies, they all have one department. They actually work on the versions of the documentation and they release different versions. And those versions will only be used regardless of the teams within that organization. So you will already have something with you. You only have to go ahead and write details within those sections. You don't have to worry about the sections and creating a new documentation for the company. Unless there's a startup, new company is there, and that company does not have any documentation, then probably they may ask you to come up with one of the format then it is up to you what information you would like to add in that document. You can go ahead. Most of the time, you will have something already written in the format size, and then probably you can go ahead and start writing your details within those predefined sections in that document. So here you see the first thing is says revision history. This revision history, I've given you one example at the right hand side of the screen. You will see revision history is nothing but to let the viewer or readers know at what point in time what revision was made to the documentation, who made it, who reviewed it, and what actually we changed. So if you see, the first thing is 0.1D. This was the initial document. I've written it as a draft. Draft as in this is not the released version. Draft is like I'm still working. However, I'm sharing with you to review, but it is not officially released. It is a draft version. So I may change a lot of things. You can go ahead, feel free to read it out, provide your feedback, but do not consider it as a final released version. So that's why we want to write this D there. Now you may ask me, is that something every company follows? I would say no. Every company has their own way of doing versionings. They may write things differently. I'm just giving you one example that how different versions are being written. So the initial document is 0.1D I've written. That was released on March 15, and or probably March 15, I started working. Who started working? It's me. I've written my name there. Did someone review and approve? No, because this is the initial document. Now on March 27, I released one official document as a 1.0 version. Now this document has latest version at 1.0. Who reviewed it? Mike Huffman, probably my manager or someone who has approving authority, has reviewed the document and approved. And I can also write the date, what date Mike Huffman has reviewed. I did not write the date here, but then you can write the date anytime. Maybe it could be the same date. Most of the time, same date, because this is going to the business, or this has been released for the internal purposes. You may have different dates. I don't know. Now, what is the comment? Comment said this was the first released version of the document. Now we released this 1.0, someone reviewed and provided you feedback. And based on the feedback, I went ahead and added one new section in the documentation, which is I updated section 5 of the functional requirement, and I added one new functional requirement, which is FR5. Just giving you a generic example, it could be this could completely change. So what I added a new business requirement there. So how would different people know what was the change here? So I will have to write this specifically, clearly, so that if someone is going to go ahead and see the revision history, they will easily know, okay, now what is the latest version of the document is 1.1. Within 1.1, what is new? Section 5 was updated and new functional requirement was added. If I go and see the version 1.0, I will not consider this new change. Under 1.1, which is the latest version of the document, these were the changes were made. Who made it? When was it made? Who reviewed and approved? So I have been given 1.1 version, and I know this was the change. So I can simply go to that section of like business requirement documentation, section 5. Under section 5, I can see what is FR5 is talking all about. So this will be easy for me to understand what was changed. If you do not write these revision histories, this will be really difficult for someone to figure out what was changed. Why are you giving me a new version of the documentation? Example, let's say if I have 1 or 2 pages of the document, fine, I can read everything. If I have 200 pages, do you really believe this will be easy for me to find out what you have changed and read unless you give me the clear instructions? So this is very important to write revision history. Nowadays, we have online tools as well, like GitHub, you might have heard. These are the tools being used for the versionings of different things. There could be document versions, software release versions, a lot of things are there. You might see people using those tools as well in the company to write all those versionings, but this will always be in the document as well, because you're sharing this document. So document should tell exactly what you have done. I just thought to take some time and give you the importance of the revision history. That's the reason I'm talking it right now. Now let's move back to this the format. So in the format, you'll see the first section has introduction. Within the introduction, we have purpose. What is the purpose of the document? What is the document conventions that you would want to write clearly, define things and let the people know? And then you have who will be the audience of this document, who you are going to share this document with. So you will also write their names here. What is the project scope and any references? Now, references could be anything. You might have received one document from business as an initial business requirement document. You will also attach that document to your business requirement document as a reference. You may have done some of the meetings and you have created some MOMs. We have studied before in the previous class. You may also want to include or attach that MOM in your business requirement documentation as a reference point. Anything you can write. You can write any email communications, any statements in the reference section. So reference section may have attachments, statements, anything that is supporting your business requirement documentation. Now, how would you organize this thing? This section will completely depending upon what org you're working and how they have organized things. They may have seen, you might see under introduction, you might see under some other sections, but you most probably going to see these sections in your documentations. Now, what is the overall description? You have to write what is the product perspective, the features, all those user classes, characteristics, everything. You will write system features. You will write external interface requirements like GUI. We call it graphical user interface. You will also write some functional, non-functional, hardware, software, all those requirements. You may have some other requirements as well. You may have something which is like if you see the glossary point, this will have like description of something that is common across the teams, common across the org. So your company would like to add those things as well in the documentation. Anything. You may write some the verbiage is, let's say if you're using BRD. So what is BRD? You would also want to add one section at the bottom that tells, okay, whenever you see BRD, I meant business requirement document. When you see GUI, I meant graphical user interface. All those abbreviations you will also write in the documentation. So this is just a generic example. You may come up with your own version of the requirement if your company does not have one already in place. Most of the time you will have one certainly written already, and you will use that documentations. Any questions here?
No.
Cool.
No.
What is the purpose of a BRD in software development? Give me one answer, please.
It's C.
It's D. Provide. D.
Okay, let's see what is the answer. C, to capture the requirement of stakeholders. Blueprint is something different. Blueprint is not the requirement documentation. It's like you're giving a high level, something that customer can feel. This might be a document as well, but this is certainly not a business requirement document. So you're writing the business stakeholders requirement there. You're not writing the timeline and budget. Timeline budget is a separate document that comes based on this document. And this document may not have all those technical expectations, specification. As I said, this will be for the business. This will be a business language thing. So technical specification might be there, might not be there. That depends if your organization has SRS or not. But definitely the answer C is the correct, to capture the requirement of the stakeholders. What is the key component of a BRD that outlines the detailed functionality of the software?
D.
We have studied like many key components. So which one is the key component that will talk more about the functionality of the software?
D.
Okay, any other answer?
It's D.
Okay, let's see the answer. Yes, D. The functional requirement is the only key component that will talk about the functionality of the software. Every functionality goes under functional requirement section. So that's true. Cool. Right, so I think we're at the end of this course. This is the tips I always give you guys. I have explained to you many times in the previous videos. I'm not going to explain it right now. Unless you have any questions, you can ask. Otherwise, I'm going to skip this section. The project summary, we have studied this before as well. This talks about what is a good requirement is going to do for you. So we have studied this in detail. This is just a summary. What is the benefit of a good project requirement documentation? If you're writing in a scope, out of scope, how it's going to help you, how this will help you identify the risks, how this will help you to control the scope of the project. This page talks more about like high level summary. So you can take some time and you can read this out. pretty simple, self-explanatory. If you have any questions, you can comment. I can answer your questions. Thank you very much, all of you, for your time.